If I may have your attention, please. At this time, we're going to begin the funeral service here in our chapel for Mr. Martin Lubowich. As we begin the service, I would ask if any of you has a cell phone or any other noise-making device, please turn them off at this time. Officiating the service here today in person is Rabbi Jeffrey Weil, and Cantor Benjamin Warshawski will be participating remotely. The service will begin with the rabbi assisting the family in the ancient tradition of Kriya. If I could ask all of the family members wearing ribbons to please stand together at this time.
As we prepare for Kriya, Kriya means tearing. And in the Bible, when anything calamitous would happen to our biblical forebears, when there's some sudden shock, when darkness came to their lives, they would tear their garments, in a sense, exposing their vulnerable and wounded hearts. And this is Kriya, and we do this according to tradition when we lose a loved one as well. The blessing that the family members will recite, which you'll repeat after me in a moment, acknowledges God even at times of sadness as Dayan Ha'emet, the judge of truth. I will recite first in English, and then Cantor Warshawski will sing in Hebrew a psalm, Adonai ma Adam, Adonai, eternal God, what are we that you have regard for us? What are we that you would even be mindful of us? We're all of us just a breath. Our days are like a passing shadow. We come and go like grass, which in the morning of our lives it shoots up and is renewed, and in the evening of our lives it fades and withers. But God, you cause all of us to return unto dust, saying, Shuvu b'nei Adam, return, O mortal ones. Would that we were wise, and would that we understood whither we go from here. For when we die, we carry nothing with us, not our glory, not our riches. But God, you say, Shmor tam urei yashar, mark the wholehearted, behold the upright. Those are the ones who shall find shalom, who shall find peace in the end. Marty Lubowich, we know, was such a man, tam v'yashar, wholehearted and upright. It's my pleasure now to call upon Cantor Benjamin Warshawski to sing the verses from this psalm, Adonai ma Adam.
Adonai Madam Matedoeu Benenu Shevadilash Beu Adam Lahebel Dama Yomav Kitzel Over Baboker Yatzit Vechalaf Lo Erev Yimolel Veyabesh Toshem v'noshadaka, v'tomer shuvu shuvu b'nei Adam. Lu chachmu yaskilu zo, siyavinu le'acharisam, ki lo v'moso yikach hakol, lo yired acharav kevodo. Shemor tamurei yashar, ki acharis shalom, Ode Adonai nefesh avodah, velo yeshmu kol hachosim bo.
Thank you, Cantor Warshawski. Ashrei ha'ish asher lo halach be'atzat risha'im u'v'derech chata'im lo amad u'v'moshav leitzim lo yashav ki im b'torat Adonai chavtzo v'torato yeheget yomam v'layla v'haya ka'etz shatul al pal gemayim asher priyo yitain b'ito v'alehu lo ibol v'chol asher yaseh yatzliach, a psalm which very much describes Marty Lubowich. Happy is the one who does not follow the counsel of the wicked, or take in the path of sinners, or join the company of the insolent. Rather, the teaching, the instruction of God is their delight, and they live by that teaching all the time. They are like a tree planted beside streams of water. It yields its fruit in season. Its foliage never fades. Its fruit always flourishes. You'll find in our handouts the 23rd Psalm. We read together, The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Cantor Warshawski will sing again. I ask those who are handling the audio, the tech for this, to, if you can, raise the volume. That would be appreciated. Raise the volume within the chapel. The verses from Kohelet or Ecclesiastes, the third chapter of Kohelet, present this idea that everything happens at the appropriate time, when things should, that there's a time for everything that happens in our lives. Very difficult to understand the way life unfolds at times, and yet these are the words, and this is the teaching. For everything there's a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot that which is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve, a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace, a time when we must refrain from our embraces, a time to seek, a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear, a time to sow, and a time for silence and a time to speak. I now once again call upon Cantor Benjamin Warshawski to sing a verse from a song that was very meaningful to Marty Lubowich. Cantor Warshawski once again.
Shalom, friends.
anyone who had the privilege of knowing Martin Lubowich or stepping into Marty and Shirley's house knows that this song was true. You never walk alone when you were close with Marty Lubowich, and he never walks alone. So I thought in this moment, I wanted to sing this beautiful song, knowing that we'll never walk alone as long as we have him in our hearts.
When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm is a golden sky and the sweet silver song of a lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on, with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone.
Thank you so much, Cantor Warshawski. Thank you so very much. Write your sorrows in sand and your blessings in stone. This adage is written, I've seen it on a stone in the home, the dining room area of Marty and Shirley Lubowich. Write your sorrows in sand and your blessings in stone. I mentioned these words in November of 2021 at the funeral of Ken Lubowich, his memory for blessing. And now I apply it to Marty Lubowich, his memory for blessing. And as I said about Ken, if we were to etch in stone the blessings from the life of Marty, if we were to inscribe in a stone all his manifold blessings, we would need a very, very large stone. We would need like a Mount Rushmore-sized stone for the blessings of Marty Lubowich, as we would for Ken as well. For Marty had so many blessings, and Marty shared those blessings. He shared them with family, friend, and stranger. He shared them with customer and congregation. He shared them with human and canine. He shared his blessings of love and generosity. He and Shirley shared the blessing of hospitality that can only be compared, as daughter-in-law Susan said the other night, compared to that of another holy couple, Abraham and Sarah, known for their hachnasat orchim, the welcoming of guests. Marty Lubowich came into this world 95 and a half years ago, the youngest son of immigrant parents, Rose and Morris, or Pa, brother to Ralph, David, Archie, and Jeanette, who is here with us today. The family lived in back of the yards on the south side. The story is that Morris, this creative, entrepreneurial immigrant, saw this neighborhood with a school and kids scurrying around the neighborhood and in and out of the school, and he thought, well, these kids must need clothes and shoes. So he opened Morris's. The family lived upstairs. Very much a life revolved around that store. As a little kid, Marty knew when he was needed downstairs because he'd hear the banging on the heating pipes, and he'd come running down. There were, in that neighborhood, 4 Jewish families. This was not easy. He, Marty, as a sensitive child, as Jeanette said, was taunted with anti-Semitic slurs. He was beaten up. He once told me that knives were pulled at times. to protect the money that he needed to get to and from school on the train car, he'd hide coins in his shoes. Despite all that, Marty Lubowich, and this would be not a surprise to anyone who knew Marty, he was well-liked. So much so that he was elected to be mayor of Mark Sheridan School. He was the mayor. As a Jewish kid, seriously, he may have been a compromised candidate among the Irish and Italian kids. That's politics in Chicago. But you know, Marty was extraordinarily well-liked. At Harrison High School, Marty did well. At least he did well in science. At least he did well in chemistry. I've not actually heard about the other classes because chemistry was really all that mattered. For there was in his class a certain cute girl, Shirley Abrams. During one semester, she earned a G for good, which is not bad, but it's not an E, which I guess is for excellent, or an S for superior, which is what Marty earned. And so she enlisted Marty to help her improve her grade. She hoped that his tutelage might boost that academic achievement. And so he tutored her, and when the grades came in at the end of the quarter, they both ended up with G's. And I'm just going to say that the G stands for great, because their 76-year marriage was a great love affair. As they would both say about each other, when you pick a good one, keep him or keep her. And they did. At a high school graduation celebration, Marty asked Shirley to be his date on a boat trip from downtown to St. Joe in Michigan. But Shirley had already committed herself to going along with a friend of hers, that they do that boat ride together. So Marty, ever the gentleman, paid for both of them. Sorry to report that the waters on Lake Michigan were turbulent, and the girls spent the trip leaning over the railing, and in Shirley's phrasing, so you'll forgive me, they were feeding the fish. Marty was helping them both. What a guy. They married. The young couple became young parents, first to Don and then Ken. Shirley had been an only child in a quiet home, in this new home with these two little boys, two rambunctious boys, no longer quiet. Renee came along, perhaps to imbue the home with a little bit of calm, and she probably did. The Lubowiches first lived on St. Louis with the Blocks in the same house, same structure, Jeanette and her family. And then they moved, of course, to Davis, with the Blocks soon moving right around the corner. That home, which so many of us know, and so many of us feel so comfortable in, the home of Marty and Shirley and Don and Ken and Renee, was, I think, to put it very mildly, dynamic. It was playful. It was vibrant. It was fun. And there was humor. It was funny. And Marty was certainly big part of creating that atmosphere, with that little glint in his eye when he was about to make a joke or pull some practical joke or something like that. Marty worked hard, though, at Morris's on Fullerton. That's where their store was. He once told me 80 hours a week at times. Morris's was a very early off-price department store of discounted name brands. He'd drive to buy these from these stores, Milwaukee, elsewhere, and he'd cram into the car boxes and boxes of overstock, samples and closeouts, so much so that he couldn't see through the mirrors. On Sundays, Morris's department store would treat customers to bagels and coffee. That's good. Mondays and Thursdays were late nights, and Marty would have to close after the store closed. And then he would visit a new dining establishment recently opened and bring home French fries and vanilla shakes late at night on those Mondays and Thursdays. That new dining establishment, McDonald's. Don, Ken, and Renee would wake up late at night to enjoy, on school nights, their dad's tasty generosity. Generosity that was, and certainly still is, the prevailing ethic within this Mishpachat Lubowich, the family Lubowich, the house and home of the Lubowiches. One never leaves that house hungry, that's for sure. And they do not merely have food. They'll have your food. I have rarely sat at their kitchen table or their dining room table without a bowl of pistachios placed before me. Thank you so much for the pistachios. They also had just fun food. Not that pistachios aren't fun, they are. But my kids remember the soda fountain downstairs. And of course, the well-stocked candy bar. And Marty was famous for preparing and presenting fruit trays. Beautiful to look at, healthy and wonderful to eat. He would do it for anyone, at any time, and for any number of people. And Corey, I don't know if the story will be told later, but I'll tell it now as well. One time, Corey called his grandparents at night to ask if he'd drop by with a group of his theater friends. How many? Well, they thought he said 15. It was 50. Marty and Shirley said, sure, of course, because they are unfazed and undaunted. And when he arrived with these scores of other kids, all good, very short notice, lots of kids. Marty and Shirley, as always, completely welcoming, and fruit tray was prepared. Their generosity was capacious. It came from a big heart. Glenn, a very dear friend of this family, lived with the Lubowiches for a long time when he was in need of a stable home. Marty's generosity extended in other directions too. He would co-sign loans for employees. He would give people money, cash, anonymously. One year, around Christmas time, there was a father who came to the store to buy presents for his children. And at a certain point, he realized he did not have enough money to pay for those clothes. So he began to put them back on the shelves. Marty insisted that he take those clothes home for his children for free. Not a loan, but a gift. Years later, that man brought lucrative business to Morris's, but that is not at all what motivated Marty Lubowich. His heart motivated him to do this. He sold the store in 1984, and this then allowed him and Shirley to turn their attention to other great loves. First and foremost, of course, the family as it was expanding and extending. Don and Susan, Ken and Lee, Renee and Pat, and Corey, Jamie, Kevin, Emma, and Hannah. And now, of course, Jake as well. This new generation of Lubowiches, you'll hear the stories in a few minutes. The fun and the love just expanded with this new generation, and they will discuss this soon. The closing of the store also allowed Marty and Shirley to spend more time in our community, the synagogue community, Ezra Habanim, the Niles Township Jewish Congregation, EHNT. I once called them Mr. and Mrs. EHNT JC. An honor for them, more of an honor for us. Rabbi Brief, who I know is listening now, is extremely grateful. We spoke this morning, and over the years, extremely grateful to Marty and to Shirley. He referred to Marty as an ish chayil, a man of valor, which he was, and a true mensch. One past president referred to Marty Lubowich as a prince. And our immediate past president, Dr. Ed Cohen, talked about how Marty would call him with sage advice, with wisdom about how to handle all manner of business. I'm glad that he is here, and our president, Judge Shelley Sucker-Dermer, is here too. Past President Ada Rabinowitz, too, and probably others as well. Many of our congregants are here. So he was loved. It was an honor to have your regular presence and to continue to have your regular presence, surely among us. And what fun when you would open your home to our religious school students for the Sukkot parties. There was pizza, ping pong, pistachios, there was a sukkah, there was candy. And what an inspiration that Marty was when he insisted or suggested that we call our jewel cards that we would give to needy members of the community. He wanted to call them sunshine cards. What a great idea. Creative, warm, and inspirational. What a joy it was when you celebrated your 70th anniversary in our community. And what a pleasure and honor it was for me when you occupied your regular seats at our Thursday morning Bible class, just to my left, cups of coffee and the Bible open in front of you. It's a pleasure. You have been a true, beloved presence and great supporters of our community. I remember one evening in 2012, I was new to the congregation. I was still a little unsteady on my feet there, trying to figure things out. And I spoke to Marty on the phone. I remember I was walking Lucky. And of course, he always asked about Lucky. That's our dog. And I was walking around the neighborhood and talking to Marty on my cell phone. And as we were talking, it was like a 40-minute conversation. I realized during that conversation, I thought to myself, if this congregation has within it members like Marty and Shirley Lubowich, then this is surely the place for me, and everything will be okay. And we do have such members, and it's been wonderful, largely because of people just like you, Shirley, and Marty. Friends, we are now approaching the darkest day on the Jewish calendar, Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av. It commemorates calamities on the Jewish calendar, particularly the destruction of the first and second temples. Dark day, our darkest day. It's a fast day. This, too, is a dark day, for we have lost a man whom we all truly love and admired. You know, one's name in Jewish tradition contains one's essence. Marty's Hebrew name, Meir, it means one who shines, one who brings light, Meir. Marty brought lights to this world. It's sometimes a dark world. Marty brought light, as Shirley brings light, as Ken brought light, as this kind and generous, truly loving family brings light to all of us. We need such people in this world. We are grateful to him, to you. So as we mourn the good man, may we bask in his still bright light. Zichrono livracha, may his memory ever be for blessing. Amen. It's my pleasure to honor to call up members of the family. First, pleased to call forward Don Lubowich. Don.
All of you knew my father in many different ways. But here are some things you may or may not know about my father. My father told me that despite being born on the south side of Chicago in 1927, he grew up listening to the Cubs games as they had winning teams. He always liked the winner. They were in the World Series in 1932, 35, 38, and 45. So they were winning while he was growing up. He told me how he vividly remembered the weekend of his bar mitzvah, because the Bears won the NFL championship on that Sunday, 73-0, the largest blowout in NFL history. That's how he remembered his bar mitzvah. Although he was the tallest student in his class when he graduated from 8th grade, the rumors that he was recruited for a high school football and basketball team were not true. However, he was in the choir, and he actually was in ROTC in high school. My parents were married on February 2nd, Groundhog Day, 1947. While I always teased them about it, my father was very good-natured about the teasing. I was born 5 weeks premature and was in incubator for 7 weeks. Because my parents came to see me and hold me so often, I did not lose my eyesight. In those days, incubators used pure oxygen, which caused blindness. My father was always interested in current affairs, and we discussed politics all of his life. One of my earliest memories was watching the 1952 presidential election returns of Governor Stevenson of Illinois, versus Eisenhower, with my father and others on a small black and white TV. It was about like this size. And I remember the announcer was writing the results on a blackboard with chalk in those days. A little different today. My father would spin a globe and point to a location, and we had to name the country. It still helps me answer Jeopardy questions today. My dad loved to see us when he got home working long hours at the Morris department store, and he often brought us home treats. When I was older, I was excited to go to work with him on Sundays to help out. I played with the green X-ray fluoroscope used to fit shoes, so much so that I thought my feet would glow green. In high school, I was the youngest salesman, selling children's clothes from the basement, like a vampire. Later on, I went with him to buy clothing at the Merchandise Mart and with Jack Winter in Milwaukee. We stuffed a station wagon with clothes to sell. My father was very open to new ideas for merchandising. We bought a handheld calculator for $150, which replaced a paper tape adding machine. And we got a device to attach labels and price tags for clothing using a little machine where you just squeezed it. In 1958, my parents took me to two events which changed my life. We saw the road company tour of My Fair Lady. While I can't sing, dance, or act like other members of my family, I became part of the audience. I pay for tickets, and I still go to the theater. However, we went to the Adler Planetarium that year. While my brother and sister complained that their neck hurt, I loved it, and I decided to become an astronomer, which I ultimately did years later, and I still am an astronomer today. When we got our first color TV, we watched Bonanza and Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color on Sundays as a family. My father was an excellent photographer, and you'll see some in the house, you'll see my pictures, my brother's pictures, and some of my father's pictures, who taught my brother and I about black and white and color photography, including composition, f-stops, focal length, aperture, shutter, and film speeds. He knew all of that. We went on many family vacations growing up. We had 3 kids and a large collie and a station wagon. Went to Colorado, Niagara Falls, Washington, D.C., Gettysburg, Williamsburg, and the New York World's Fair. Many of you don't know them. We had a large collie named Lady, wonderful dog growing up. My dad loved it so much that he became both a dog trainer and he judged at dog shows. Many of you didn't know that, but he actually did that for a while. He continued the family vacation tradition all of his life. Later, these vacations included spouses and grandchildren, and the final one was in Toronto in 2017. One year we decided to possibly break the Guinness World Record for softball. We played a 48-hour softball game. He sat with us all day and all night, he and my mom, so he could supervise us, because some of the people were under 18 at the time. When I moved to New York in 1976, we went back to Chicago for Passover, Thanksgiving, and Simchas. At Passover, my father led the Seders, and he observed the mitzvah that all who are hungry, let them come and eat. My parents invited friends, relatives, and strangers to come and celebrate Passover with us. My father never let anyone go hungry in his house or go home without food, candy, taffy apples, or nuts, sometimes all of them. During every Thanksgiving, a family tradition was to go to Walker Brothers for pancakes. My parents went to Walker Brothers during the year so often that I thought they were going to put a plaque with their names on a table. On Sundays, we often went to Fin and Feather Farm in Elgin for dinner, even though it seemed like it took forever to get there. In the fall, we went apple picking at Wakanda orchards, past Lake Zurich. My dad climbed up on a ladder to help pick a bush of apples. My father always loved his children. Last Friday, his final words to me were, "I love you." You'll be missed and loved by all of us.
Thank you, Don, and amen to all of that. He will be missed and loved by all of us. Thank you so much, Don. Honor to call forward daughter Renee.
What's that? Yeah. I'm missing a page.
Is it the first page?
Just a second. I'm going to wing it. Anybody who ever knew my father knew that he was the kindest soul that ever lived. I have 100 stories of his kind and generous giving soul, but I will tell you only one. Literally, he gave me the shirt off his back. In 1988, I was living in Boston by then, but I came back to Chicago to make a panel for the AIDS quilt for a friend, a high school friend who had died of AIDS. Several high school friends got together in our basement, worked all night sewing and stitching and embroidering. And we wanted it to be perfect. Our friend Tim was a very talented performer. He was had been on Broadway and had been in the original Broadway cast of Cats. And we had decided to, as part of this panel, to do a embroider playbills from many of the shows he had been in. And it came to Cats, and we were looking for material. We needed something yellow for the yellow of the eyes. And we couldn't find anything. It was well past midnight. We couldn't go to buy anything. My parents had been out for dinner with friends. They came back downstairs to see how we were doing, and we told them we were struggling with some pieces. He looked down at the shirt he was wearing, which happened to be yellow. He said, "Look, it has a little piece of loose thread. I could never wear this again." He took off his shirt. I actually, this morning, if you're interested, I looked it up online, and I found Tim's panel. You'll be able to ask me later. You can see the yellow eyes of cats. It's now part of the Library of Congress. He loved his family, loved his friends, loved his life, and loved life. And his goodness knew no bounds. But that wasn't all of him. He was playful. He loved the Cubs. He loved, win or lose, he loved the Cubs. He cried when they won the World Series. He loved nothing more than going to the apple orchard in the autumn, picking bushels of apples and bringing them back to give to friends and family. He loved to play boggle, played a mean game of rummy cube, always won. In later years, he turned many of us into bananagrammers. He played football with my brothers. He had a twinkle in his eye, and the way he'd start a pillow fight was to perch a pillow just so at his bedroom door and then innocently call me in. "Renee, please come in." I'd come in, and of course the pillow would fall on my head, and great laughter would ensue. He was when I was born, the first girl after 5 boys in the St. Louis household, it was time for my 3-month-old portrait. My parents wanted to have a professional photograph. And so he walked, of course, to all the children's section, looked through all the clothes and brought something home. And my mother said, "Why did you bring this? It's much too big." And he said it was the most beautiful dress in the whole store. And that's what he wanted me to wear. And that was him. He always brought out the best and most beautiful in each of us. When on his 75th birthday, the grandkids acted out a story. It was called King Martin, Doer of Good Deeds. They gave him a Burger King crown to wear and a plunger for a scepter. And talked about being a doer of good deeds. In honor of that, of the good King Martin, and all the good he did while he walked among us, I hope that you will pass it on. We have out front these postcards, and hope you'll take one with you when you leave. It's addressed to my family, and it says, as a tribute to Martin Lubowich and to continue his legacy. This is what I have done to make the world a better, kinder place or help another in need. We hope you will write something on it, something you'll do to help somebody else, and mail it to us. We think my mother will get great pleasure out of knowing that that he made a difference, and even though he is no longer with us, his goodness continues to make the world a better place. I'm glad that my dad is no longer suffering, and I'm glad that he and Ken are together again. But I must say that the hole in my heart has just doubled in size. I just don't know how to live in a world without him. I will learn, I suppose, as will the rest of us. But we will need your help, especially my mom, a steady, devoted companion for the past 76 years. Their marriage and their love story is one for the ages. Mom, there is nothing I can say to ease your pain, which I know seems impossible to bear, but you will never be alone. We are all with you, standing together in pain and sadness, and also with great love in our hearts, the same way he did for all of us for so many years. On his very last day, people stopped by to talk, to laugh, and to visit. It was like a little party in my parents' bedroom. I'm sure he felt our presence, and I know it brought him great comfort. A number of us took turns holding his hand, telling him how much we loved him. Several times, he took my hand and put it over his heart. That generous, loving, kind, wonderful heart beats on in all of us, if we only take time to hear it.
Thank you so much, Renee, for those beautiful, beautiful words. Now very honored to call forward daughter-in-law Lee. Thank you, Lee.
When I moved to America, Marty welcomed me into the family right away. He treated me like his own daughter and even taught me how to drive. And over the years, he welcomed my family from Taiwan into his as well. After the boy was born, everything we needed that needed fixing, he'd take care of it right away. When we brought Corey home from the hospital, he'd sit in the rocking chair holding the baby for hours with a hole in his knee of his jeans. He must have tripped at the hospital but didn't notice because his grandson was the most important things in the world. I'm so grateful to have known him for his generosity and his kindness. From all of my family in Taiwan, we wish you 一路好走. Dad, thank you for everything. I know that you are no longer in pain and that Ken is taking care of you in the next life. I love you.
Thank you, Lee. Grandson Jamie. Together? Okay. Oh, okay. Granddaughters Hannah and Emma.
So, to most people, Martin Lubowich went by Marty, Uncle Marty, or Dad. But to the 5 of his grandchildren, we had the immense privilege of calling him Papa. Papa led by example. He was a kind, generous, and hardworking man. And we grew up on stories of his childhood in Chicago, the famous story of being elected mayor, because as the only Jewish kid in his class, it was the least controversial. And of course, of falling in love with Nana and their famous first date on the boat. So Papa, ever generous, as we know, paid for both of her ticket and her friend's ticket and watched them feed the fish. So, and then of course stories of the department store that he ran with his family. And he was a man humbled by his success and in a constant state of appreciation for the love around him. It did not ever escape him. And when we grandchildren were born, Papa had already led an extraordinary life, and he was generous with his stories, the lessons they imparted, and the endless love that he had. Since we lived in Boston, Nana and Papa's house was the place where our family converged and became whole. Their house is filled with art, decorations, curiosities, each with a story of its own. I had a few favorite art pieces. You all have probably seen, if you've been in the house, the portrait of the beautiful Italian woman with the low-cut top that Nana loves to joke is a portrait of her. And I would always gravitate to this glass prism that sat in the living room, which I loved to play with. Held in the sun, the white light would catch and refract, spreading into a complicated rainbow. When I think of Papa and his legacy, I can't think of a better metaphor. Papa effortlessly channeled the love and joy of his life and refracted it in all directions, spreading it to every corner, sharing it with everyone he touched. Everything he ever had, he shared, and his light has gone so far and so wide that it will be shining forever. And we're all carrying that light in our hearts today. For his children, grandchildren, and the chosen family he welcomed into his heart, it's no exaggeration to say he made us who we are by humbly refracting his light. And if we all keep spreading it, it will never go out.
For as sad and heartbroken as we all have been these past few days, the one bright spot has been getting to hear all the stories of the soft-spoken, fiercely loyal, and incredibly generous man that we've all had the gift of knowing for the past 95 years. I feel so blessed to have had 29 years with him, which I consider a gift in its own right. During these 29 years, I have learned many important things from Papa, like he taught me that the best place on earth is Costco, and I'm convinced that heaven looks just like Costco. There's always more room in the fridge, you just have to try harder. A group sing-along can cure every bad mood. The proper way to exchange money is through a magic handshake. You don't need an excuse to have a party, but you do need to make sure there's enough food for 3 times the amount of guests because everyone is always welcome. And that family is the most important thing in the world, so cherish every moment. As I prepare to get married soon and officially embark on my own next chapter, I can't help worrying for Jake, because Papa set a really, really, really high bar for what a husband, a father, and a grandfather should be. There is no Papa without Nana, and if I have the gift of experiencing even a quarter of the love that they shared throughout their 76 years together, I would consider myself one of the lucky few. Although I wish he could be here for these important moments still to come in all of our lives, I'm grateful for all of the memories that we have of him. His spirit lives on in all of us, and his lessons have been ingrained in us since day one. They're big shoes to fill, figuratively, not literally, because he was a size 7 wide. But I know that whenever any of us plays a game of Bananagrams or Rummikub, eats an apple pancake from Walker Brothers, or helps a stranger in need just because it's the right thing to do, it will be in his honor. Thank you for everything, Papa. We will love you forever.
Thank you both. Beautiful words. Now, Jamie.
So much to say about my grandpa, Marty, Papa, and not nearly enough time. These past 5 years, I think have been easily the most difficult years for him, my dad, this family that we've ever seen. And I take that to mean that is correlated to the quality of the life that he had and that he lived for 95 and a half years. There's so much that I learned from him, that we've learned from him. And I wanted to share just three lessons that I've taken away. The first, life is about family and friends. This is something that we learned growing up every day of our lives from their house, which was the halfway house between my mom's house and our schools. My grandma, make sure that it was the best place that was filled with games and snacks and a candy bar, so that for some reason, after school every day, all the grandkids would want to go back to Nana and Papa's house before going back home. The house was open to everyone. Strangers became friends. Friends treated as family. And it took me a while to realize this, but as I grew older, we had so many people coming through the house. It was such a place of welcoming love and joy to any and all. And it got to the point where when people would ask me, are all these people really your family? To which I would say, actually, I'm not really sure. But I think so. The second lesson is that business is about giving and helping others. He took over Moore's department store and worked long hours. And for a long time, I tried to understand how did he do it? What was his secret? And over the years, heard stories from him and from my dad, and I'd like to share one of them with you guys now. had so many ideas on not only was he so open and loving and wanting to give to everyone, he was creative and came up with great ideas, things that were far ahead of his time, and ways to give more to people. And an example of this is that at the time, stores were not open on Sundays. No one was open. And he decided, okay, they would be open on Sundays. And while everyone else was closed, and they gave out free bagels and coffee, which, who doesn't love the sound of that? And there was the acts of kindness and generosity were not limited to family and friends or customers or clients. It was to anyone and everyone who needed a hand, who could use some help and some generosity. One day, a father came into the store, really distraught. He was trying to buy gifts for his children, and trying to decide what things he could afford. It was a tough time. So, as is his character, Marty saw a man in need and jumped to his aid. He told him, grab whatever you need for all of your kids. Don't worry about the money. Get gifts for everyone. And this man was so thankful. He was overjoyed. He said, thank you. I'll repay you as soon as I can. I'm going to work so hard. You will not regret this. I appreciate it so much. And Marty looks at him and goes, no need. Keep them. Give them to your children. Have a Merry Christmas. And as the world goes, when we do good deeds, when we put good out into the world, it comes back to us in spades. And years later, this man had worked really hard, and he got involved with Jack Winter, which were at the time very, very hot, very popular pants. They're the first ones to came up with pants for women, and everyone wanted them, couldn't get their hands on them, and this man that Marty had helped years ago became the VP at Jack Winter, and he never forgot what Marty did for him on that Christmas. And he gave him access to their product lines, everything they had, first choice of everything, so that Marty was able to get everything all of these pants, all these clothes at a massive discount before anyone else. And then he in turn sold them to all of his customers at a deep discount. Before that was a thing. And so other stores just couldn't compete. And he built a loyal fan base, a following, a community around him everywhere that he went. This was in business, but it happened with friends and with family as well. Third lesson. I've now come to believe, thanks to Marty, that being a grandparent is probably the best job in the world. After he retired, he focused on all of his grandkids, and anything we wanted, we got it. He would go out of his way to stock all of our favorite things. We had the games for all of our friends to come over and play, and we soon on we learned that this was amazing, and we could ask him for anything we wanted. But then we figured out that the difficulty where we ran into trouble was, he said, you could have it as long as your mom and dad say it's okay. And that was the problem. So, we learned so much from Marty, from Papa. And in these last years, as the disease started to take over, he's continued to teach all through this time. As most of ourselves, our personality fades away and is replaced by something else unrecognizable, through the end, there is still the core of Marty inside of him, inside his heart, which he's given to all of us. My story about this is, on my birthday a few weeks ago, Marty had been steadily declining, and for all intents and purposes, he was gone. You know, there's physical remains were there in his soul, but he'd been slowly fading away. Then, on my birthday, he woke up again. As it can't be explained, but for the whole day, he was there, and he went from not being able to speak, barely has to go to the bathroom, to getting up and asking, how are the stores doing? How's business? Is everything okay? And I'm like, yeah. Everything is great, Papa. Things are going well. Oh, great. And he heard that people were here, were over, and he asked, are people still downstairs? Are people still here? I'm like, yeah, of course. Said, all right, come and get me in 15 minutes, and I'll come down and join you and say hi to everyone. and that's who he was, to his core. What can I say? He set such a high bar, as Hannah said, for how to live a good life, to be a good person, and share love, kindness with everyone. And just like we learned it from my dad, we also learned it from Papa. So now all of us carry on the torch and have his memory in our hearts from today and forward. And towards the end, one of the last things he said, when things were particularly tough, he would say, be over there and we'd take care of it, whoever was around. He'd say, thank God for grandchildren. really, thank God for Marty, for Papa, for my dad, for this family, and all our friends who come here to support us. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing those lessons, Jamie. Thank you all so much. Briefly, the final words before the chanting of El Malay Rachamim, which Cantor Wachowski will chant for us. Before that, the final words come from young Shirley and young Marty. I think, Shirley, that when you wrote this, you might have been 17. I guess this might have been from your yearbooks or something like that, yeah. From Shirley, these words. Dear Martin, it has been such a long time since you and I were in physics together, even though you didn't know that I was alive at that time. Since then, I've gotten to know you much better. All I can say is that I hope we can still be friends long after the graduation exercises are over. Shirley. You got your wish. And from Marty. Dear Shirley, to my best girl, may we continue our friendship out of Harrison that we started in school. It has been one of the most enjoyable parts of my life. Even if you don't go on the boat trip, I will always remember you as one of my fondest acquaintances. To the future, I wish you all the luck and happiness in the world. No matter what happens later, I will always be your best friend. Martin. Please rise for El Malay Rachamim. I'll recite it first in English, and then Cantor Wachowski will conclude this part of the service by chanting it in Hebrew. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence with the holy and the pure who shine like the glow of your heavens. To Martin Lubowich, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence and within the shadow of your wings. Let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. And we say, Amen. Cantor Wachowski.
شوفین بامرومین همه سیمنو خانه خونات آخا سکان و عاشقینا به مالوس که دوشی متهوریم که زار هراکی آمازیریم es nishmas. Meir ben Yisrael Moshe Rachel she'alach le'olamo ba'avur she'tein tzedakah be'aras konas nishmaso Adonai hu nachalaso
וינוח בשלום על משכבו ונאמר
Amen. You may be seated.
This concludes the service here in our chapel. The interment will take place immediately at the family's plots at Memorial Park Cemetery, 9900 Grosse Pointe Road here in Skokie. For those of you that may not be aware, Grosse Pointe Road is closed going northbound from Gulf Road, so we will be entering from Skokie Boulevard. Following the interment today, the family invites you to return here to this building where they'll be sitting Shiva from 12 noon until 3 p.m. Those of you in attendance that go to the cemetery will be invited back immediately. They'll also continue the Shiva at the Lubowich residence this evening from 7 to 9, Friday from 4 to 8, and Sunday from 2 to 7. All of that information is on the inside portion of the funeral service folder you should have received. If you did not receive one, they are available as you depart today. For those of you watching the service online, this information is available on the website you are currently on. Also ask you please take note in the service folder the family has asked that memorial contributions be made to Ezra Habanim, the Niles Township Jewish congregation. For those of you joining with the family in procession, the procession will form in our parking lot. Please make sure you have an orange funeral safety sticker. Place that sticker in the front passenger side of your windshield. We'd also ask you please have your bright headlights and flashing hazard lights on at all times. For an additional measure of safety, our staff will be placing magnetic flags on the tops of the vehicles. We do have a car in the front and the rear of the procession to keep everybody together, but as we drive through intersections, please drive as close as safety permits to the vehicle in front of you at all times. We want to avoid having any large spaces or large gaps in the procession, particularly as we pass through the intersections. The following individuals have been selected to act as pallbearers today. That would be the 5 grandchildren, Corey, James, Kevin, Emma, and Hannah. And we would also ask that Glenn Hartman and Jake Rosen please step forward. Thank you. This time I would ask everyone to please rise as the deceased and his family and clergy are escorted from the chapel. I'll ask everyone to please go directly to your cars at this time.